Assalamu alaikum viewers. Welcome to lecture 23 of International Marketing subject. From our previous lecture, we had started to discuss the topic of modes of entry into international markets. We had identified few common modes of entry, which included exporting, licensing, franchising, counter trade, some specialized modes of entry, and entering foreign markets through foreign direct investments. We had discussed in detail in our previous lecture exporting mode of entry into international markets. And we had discussed that exporting is the simplest way and the quickest way of entering foreign markets. It involves often less financial commitment and hence less risk. Again, exporting allows the firms to gradually enter foreign markets because entering foreign markets involves a lot of unknown situations. And if firm commits a lot of funds, a lot of money upfront, then there's a lot of risk because of the unknowns in foreign markets. So exporting allows firms to know more about foreign markets, about the distribution system, where the things can be marketed, the environments in foreign countries, political environment, marketing environment, and other relevant environments. And firms can also experience consumer behavior, which is relevant to the product of the firm. So after gaining that experience, then firm can opt to commit more resources and to get involved more directly into those markets. Again, in era of globalization, the importance of location has in fact been enhanced. That regions and the advantages of regions are a crucial requirement for firms to succeed in international markets. Not only firms need to develop their internal capabilities, they also need to acquire a lot of support from the region, support from infrastructure, support from related and supporting industry which exist in proximity, so that a firm can efficiently manufacture and create products and services which are often very complex and requires many companies, many organizations to come together to produce the final product. Hence, regions are successful in international markets, regions which bring together the related and supporting industry in an efficient way and provide the infrastructure and provide the opportunity and the advantages in transaction. And hence, we see that there are certain regions for certain product categories which are successful worldwide. For electronics, we see certain regions around the world that have been consistently successful. For example, Silicon Valley in California. For textiles, in case of Pakistan, we have seen regions like Faisalabad have been consistently much more successful than other regions in the country. For sporting goods and surgical goods, Sialkot is an example. So we concluded that regions are very important in helping firms create products more efficiently and effectively. As a result, exporting remains one of the most viable options for firms to expand into international markets. Now today we'll move on to our next topic, and again it's a very, very important topic, and that is licensing. We will be aware of licensing, at least by name. Licensing is a mode of entry into international market through which a firm, a licensor, allows another firm, a licensee, to use its intellectual property, which can be in form of technology which is proprietary to the licensor firm, or maybe its brand name or its patents or copyright assets. Its brand name may include the company name or any other asset which is proprietary ownership of the firm. The licensor allows the licensee to use those assets for a fee or perhaps for a percentage on sales basis. This agreement, a contractual agreement, is called licensing. Over the years, licensing has become one of the most prominent and most frequent mode of entry into international markets. In our country also, we see lot of activity through licensing. Local firms acquired licensing, apparel brands, apparel manufacturing technologies. So we see a lot of foreign brands being produced and being marketed under the foreign brand name in our local markets by local firms. So local firms have acquired license to produce and to sell those brands in our markets. We also see a lot of licensing activity in pharmaceutical industry, where local firms have acquired through licensing contracts the opportunity to use certain formulation, certain patented drugs, brands to manufacture pharmaceutical products in our country for consumption in local markets. There is a lot of licensing activity in technology areas also, in electronic designing, in mechanical designs and other designs, which are used increasingly in auto manufacturing, manufacturing of durables and other technology products in our country. So activities under licensing contracts are ever increasing, and licensing has now increasing role in internationalization of business, internationalization of technologies, and of course expansion of business opportunities. Now, in rapidly changing technological environments, firms really need to survive by using different technologies, different know-how at a rapid pace. Developing technologies, building brands, developing processes, making discoveries is a time-consuming process. At the same time, it involves a lot of investments, a lot of funds. And in today's time, we are seeing that technologies are changing very rapidly. At the same time, the product life cycles are shortening. And the investments and the skills and capabilities required for new discoveries, new inventions, new technology development, for research and development are very, very expensive, very, very costly. Huge sums of money are required for developing new products, new technologies, building brands, and such activities. So it is not possible for many firms around the world to successfully develop and utilize those technologies, those brands. And because of the shortening of the product life cycle, when huge investments are required in developing new designs, new products, firms, if they only rely on their own capacities, they will not have enough time to recover the huge costs required for product development. So they have to rely on other firms to quickly expand to world markets, so that they can quickly recover the cost of their research and make some profit also in a short period of time. Licensing remains perhaps the most viable option to achieve these objectives. So as a result, the licensing and activities under licensing have rapidly expanded in recent years around the world, and it has become a preferred mode of expanding business into international markets very, very rapidly. There are a number of factors which have contributed towards this rapid expansion of licensing as a mode of entry into foreign markets. One of the factors is protectionism and regulation of foreign direct investment. Many countries want foreign investment to be done in their markets for firms to get the opportunity to sell products and services. As a result, foreign firms have no option but to either move and invest directly or to engage in a contractual agreement with a local firm through licensing to produce their products or their technologies, and hence expand into those markets which are protected and regulated for foreign direct investment. A lot of research is being done by universities also around the world, and universities often do not engage themselves into commercial and business activities. So they opt often to license their discoveries, their inventions, their new developments to commercial firms, so that commercial firms can use the technologies, the inventions developed by universities to produce commercial products. And hence universities have licensed their discoveries, their inventions to commercial organizations. With increasing research and development in universities, the licensing activity around the world is also increasing rapidly. The third factor which has really contributed towards rapid expansion of licensing is the increasing number of small firms getting involved into research and development. Now, small firms which are involved in research and development, if they develop good technologies, good products, then being a small firm, they may not have capacities to quickly commercialize those products and to be able to sell those products worldwide. The option left for such firms, being small firms, is to license their technologies to other firms so that other firms can produce on their behalf products and commercialize them. And the smaller firms which have developed those technologies can also share the profits of the proceeds which result because of selling throughout the world. The next factor which has really contributed towards rapid rise of licensing is the increasing cost of R&D. Now, to develop new drugs is very, very costly. Often hundreds of millions of dollars are required to develop new drugs. And large pharmaceutical firms or research organizations have to invest a lot of money in research activity. And sometimes they are successful and sometimes they are not successful. So research and development requires huge amount of money, not only in pharmaceutical industry, in other technologies also, in electronics, in mechanical, in material. And it is now imperative that these firms should be able to recover these huge sums of money which have to be spent or which have been spent on research and development. One way to recover these huge amount is to license their discoveries and inventions to firms around the world so that the products based on those technologies can be sold quickly around the world in large number, and hence through profits, through fees, through licensing, then these research and development firms can recover their developmental and research costs. One factor which we have just discussed is the shortening of product life cycle. As world markets are becoming more mature in many product categories, and there is a lot of competition, so new and new products and new inventions are being introduced into market in many product areas. We can take example of mobile phone. Now we are seeing very rapidly new models coming into marketplace. So every new model brings in new features and added advantage. So consumers would opt to buy newer models rather than previous models. And as the competition is worldwide, new models are coming at a very rapid pace. It requires a lot of money to develop even a new model of mobile phone, sometimes hundreds of millions of dollars. And the window, the opportunity to sell that one model is very short, maybe a few months only, that companies have to recover a huge amount of money spent in designing and developing and producing a new design of a mobile phone. So firms then have to depend on other firms to quickly sell their brands, their new models around the world, so that in a shortened product life cycle, in few months, they can recover their developmental costs, their research costs, and make some profit also. Similarly, in automobile industry, there are many automakers which are very successful, and automakers are introducing new models in every category of cars very, very rapidly. And every new model again brings in added features, improved performance. So there is a trend of preference among buyers to buy newer models of cars. So there is a race now to introduce new and new models, which we see now very, very frequently in the showrooms. We sell cars. So the time window in which a new model can sell is very short, less than 1 year, maybe few months. But the costs to develop a new design of a car are immense. So the firms which design new models of cars have to sell new models around the world very, very quickly in the window that's very short that's available to them, so that they can recover the huge amount of developmental costs and research costs involved in designing new products. So this shortening of product life cycle is again forcing firms to engage into activity of licensing, so that they are able to sell the products to the world market, so that they can rapidly sell in a short window that is available to them for the new design, new model, and recover their huge expenses in developmental costs. Cross-licensing is also helping licensing to spread. There are technology firms which develop their technologies, they have their intellectual properties, their patents, and they need others' patents, other technologies to make products. And others need their patents and their technologies, so they can cross-relate to each other. While one firm is offering its technologies, its development, its intellectual properties to another firm to licensing, then the second firm in return is offering its own technology, its own development to the first firm through licensing. So increasingly we see that the worlds around the world are cooperating with each other, have forged alliances with each other, where they are cross-licensing from each other, in a way helping each other to develop final products. And nowadays, final products in many categories, in many industries, are very complex. No one firm can really master all the technologies efficiently and effectively. Hence, firms need to rely on others' technologies also to develop final products. And hence, they offer their technologies through licensing to other firms, and in return, they get licenses to use the technologies and patents and intellectual properties of other firms, so that both can produce final products efficiently. So licensing has emerged as a very viable way, an increasingly important way to expand into international markets. The firms really need to learn how efficiently they can engage in international markets through licensing, through offering licensing of their own technologies and products, or acquiring licenses from other firms of their technologies and patents and copyrights and brand names. Since it is a contractual agreement, so the firms must learn and must develop the capability to forge, to engage into appropriate licensing contracts. Foremost, a licensing contract will involve the boundaries of the agreement, what should be included in the contract and what should not be included into the contract, what should be the privileges, what should be the rights of both parties, what are the do's and what are the don'ts. Very carefully, this list has to be documented, so that the licensing contract, which is regulating the use of licenses, patents, copyrights and its use, is appropriate and is helping, not hindering, both firms. Well, in any relationship, the chances of conflicts or disagreements to arise later on are always there. Even in our very close relationship, in our family relationship between brother and brother, sister and sister, there can always be conflicts, disagreements. But that should not result into breakup of the relationships or adverse attitudes towards each other. Like in our own homes, we develop mechanisms in order to reconcile so that life can go on happily. Very often, conflicts result into better relationships also, if they are resolved appropriately. Just like that, a licensing is also a contract, is also a relationship between two firms or more. And hence, there is always an opportunity that conflicts or disagreements may arise. And if such situation arises, quite often we see that the arrangement, the cooperation stalls. And if that happens, then both parties are losers. There is no winner at the end of the day. Hence, it is imperative, it is important that part and parcel of the contract should be the compensation or reconciliation arrangement. That in case of any disagreement, what would be the mechanism to reconcile, so that the relationship should continue. If there is a breach of contract by one party, then the compensation and the method of reconciliation must be stipulated into the contract itself. Now, that's very, very essential. Very often we don't do that. Sometimes we are reluctant. Sometimes because of the cultural background, we don't want to discuss conflicts. Or we expect that no conflict will happen. But life is not like that. Things which may happen and are important should be part and parcel of the contract, with the spirit, with the hope that the relationship will continue. And part of the contract should be the mechanism for reconciliation, compensation in case of any disagreement, dispute, or breach of the contract. Now, licensing involves business, it involves profits, it involves a lot of information that is being generated about use of technologies and patent information about markets. Now, these are all very important assets, very important aspects. Who should share how much information? Who should share how much profit? What rights both companies have over each other? How far the licensor can come and inspect the business and facilities of licensee? How much profit the licensor has to share? How much information the licensee must pass on to the licensor? All these privileges, rights, and constraints must be appropriately documented and agreed upon, because these will arise, these situations would always arise in a commercial venture, in a business agreement which is contractual in nature. The contract, of course, also involves the duration, for how long this contract is going to hold. Again, it requires a lot of thoughts and careful planning. Business deals are often for long term, but technologies and their usefulness and their life is very unpredictable. We can see that certain technologies may continue to bring in profit for a very, very long run. But it can also happen because of breakthroughs and other technological innovation, the first technology becomes inappropriate. So a lot of uncertainties are there. So really it is anybody's guess how long a patent, how long a technology, how long a brand will continue to bring in profitability. Well, of course, licensor would want to maximize the firm's own profitability, while licensee will want to maximize their own profitability. And duration of agreement and contract is important aspect here. The duration should not be too short, or it should not be too long. But what is the right duration? That is something licensee and licensor, to apply their mind, apply their experience, have to carefully think about and establish within the licensing contract. Now, there are a lot of advantages of getting engaged into licensing. The licensee can acquire license of a complex technology or a useful technology without really having to invest a lot of money in developing that technology. And on the other side, the licensor can have access to world markets very, very quickly, and can have access to support and commercial acumen of licensee by licensing. So both parties are in a winning situation. But there are also a lot of risks involved into getting into licensing contract. One of the risks is limiting marketing opportunities. When a licensor has given a license of a technology or a brand for a certain market to another firm, then the licensor now cannot engage any other firm because it's a contractual agreement. Maybe later on the licensor finds that the other firm was better option. But what to do? The license or contractual agreement has been done. Similarly, the licensee may have agreed to abide by terms like not dealing with competing brands or not dealing in other products and so on and so forth. So quite often we see that the licensee and licensor, both of them have made their options limited. And that can be a risky thing. So licensing requires a lot of careful thought before parties can agree to engage in a contract. Well, just like a marriage contract, when two parties come together to marry, they are also agreeing that they will not get involved with another party. So it's a limitation out there. So while they forge a relationship, at the same time, part of the agreement is not to get involved with somebody else. So limiting factor is there. Licensing can also create future competitors. I think a very classical example we can see in India. There was a local firm in India which licensed production of scooters from an Italian firm for Indian market. So Italian firm transferred all the technologies and allowed the local firm to use their brand name. And Indian market became one of the best market and a very large market for scooters. So local Indian firm then started to produce scooters under the license from the Italian firm and was very, very successful. But after a few years, the contractual relationship between these two parties could not continue. So local firm then stopped using the name of the Italian firm and started to produce and use the same technology, same design, but with its own brand name. Now, this firm is the second largest producer of scooters in the world and competing against the Italian firm in all world markets. So there is always a big risk that if a firm develops technologies, creates brands and licenses its use to somebody else, another firm, then the another firm which over the time acquires the know-how, technology and a market share and recognition in the marketplace may become a future competitor. I was once studying the foam manufacturing market in Pakistan and came across the same situation. Now we see many producers of foam in domestic market, and many of these producers were before the dealers, the licensees of other manufacturers of foam. But over the time, as they established their own retail business, their own wholesale business in foams, then they did not need the licensee anymore, and then they started to produce themselves and became competitors of the first foam manufacturer. So this danger is always there, that risk is always there, that the licensee of technologies, of brands may become future competitors. Another risk which is often very important in case of technologies is loss of control over those technologies. Well, if a firm which develops new technology, complex technology, and gives a license to somebody else to use those technology, in the process, a lot of skills and know-how about those technologies, those processes, those formulations have been passed on to the licensee party. And a lot of know-how about the technology, its use, its development now is in the other hand. And hence the first firm which developed those technologies, those know-how, have no control now over other party and other parties' use in many cases. So some firms are very careful. Technologies involved in developing packages for liquids or liquid food is a complex technology. We often consume packaged milk, packaged juices, and we are quite familiar with this packaging. Now, the machinery involved in manufacturing those packages, in packaging the liquid, the fluid food product, are very complex technologies. And the world leader in these technologies never want to license. They are around the world, but they are operating around the world through their fully owned, 100% owned subsidiaries. Once I discuss with them why they have to do that, because it involves slow expansion in the world, because it requires a lot of money and managing huge business operations. Instead, they could have licensed their technologies and could have expanded very rapidly in world markets. But their managers said that they did not want others to get to know their packaging technology. Because if they license their technologies to others, then they have to train them on servicing those machines, and then the other parties will get to learn the technologies, the know-how. And there's a danger, then those parties will become future competitors in important world markets. So to preserve their technology, their technological know-how, they don't want to get involved into any form of licensing. So there are risks which the parties must clearly know, that the parties which develop new technologies, develop new innovations, will lose control over their technology innovations once they give a license for some other party to use those technologies. Another risk which is seen in worldwide licensing contracts is minimum performance of licensee. The whole agreement was done, and within the agreement, perhaps it was also agreed that how much sales or performance the licensee needs to achieve as part of the contract. But when real business started in the market, it was realized that licensee could sell much more very easily. But since there was a contract already done, and licensee was fulfilling that contract, that level of sales was being achieved, and licensee had no more interest to expand sales beyond those contractual agreements, even when there was a potential and easy potential for that. But licensor was bound by the licensing contract. Licensee was delivering the agreed performance and could not prevail upon, could not force the licensee to sell more. Hence, this is also a form of a risk in such agreement. Another big risk can be misuse of trademarks and brand names. When license and licensing contracts have been given around the world, often it is very difficult to monitor, to enforce all the agreements of licensing contracts. And the licensee may start to misuse those agreements, misuse those brands. Sometimes the brands are prestigious, and therefore they are considered exclusive brands in market for fashion apparel, perhaps for other consumer goods, and consumers are willing around the world to pay premium for buying products which are sold under those brand names. And there is always an incentive for licensee to misuse the licensing agreement and to produce some cheaper goods and sell under those brands very expensively without the information and knowledge of the licensor, and hence can breach the contract without no knowledge of licensor and make a lot of money. And there is always a possibility of this sort of things happening, which can eventually even damage the brand's reputation. So licensing has a lot of advantages, no doubt, but it also has a lot of risks. So licensor and licensee have to be very sensible, have to apply their mind very, very carefully before they commit themselves to a licensing contract. So some of the critical success factors in a licensing contract we will discuss now. One is to avoid licensing agreement with any party which can become a future competitor of the licensor. The licensor has to very carefully check the options available in the marketplace, has to carefully evaluate the application for licensing to ensure that the licensee or the potential licensee does not become a competitor in future. One way to ensure is that the licensor sees that the licensee will need the help of licensor all the time, that there is going to be a value which will be transferred on ongoing basis. Maybe the licensor will be able to develop new and new technologies and better technologies, and hence the licensee will always be dependent on the licensor, and there is a less risk, less chance that the licensee will break away. The licensor has also to see the background of the licensee firm, the intention of the licensee firm, and the history of the licensee firm, what they have been doing, what sort of business orientation they have, do they have a setup that can make them a competitor in future, can be known from the background of the firm, from the history of the firm. So licensor has to check the background of the firm, has to check the history of the firm to make it sure that the licensee or the potential licensee will not become a competitor in future. The licensor has also to see at the time of licensing whether there is copyright, patent and other form of legal protections in the market in the country of the licensee. Nowadays, all WTO member countries have agreed, have signed, and are bound by their agreements to enforce intellectual and property rights in their own home markets, and to enforce these intellectual and property rights by world standards. If they don't do it, they can be penalized. So environment is now much protected, much better than earlier years. But still, the licensor has to ensure at the time of signing or engaging into a contract with licensee that in the licensee's home country, the law, the legal framework regarding intellectual property right protection and enforcement of contract, the contractual law are there, and there is a rule of law. So that in case of any breach, the licensor can take legal recourse and can protect himself. So the environment, the legal environment, the contractual environment, and the rule of law in the country or in the markets for which licensee is seeking the licensing contract must ensure, must enforce proper patents, intellectual property rights and contractual rights. As we discussed earlier, there always a chance, there always a room for disagreements, for conflicts in any relationship, including the relationship of licensing. So compensation and reconciliation process must be agreed upon, must be thought very carefully, and must be made part of the contract, so that in case of any breach, in case of any conflict, the matter can be resolved amicably, and then there is always a way forward, a continuity of the relationship. Because if the licensing relationship becomes sour, then no party is a winner. Both parties are losers. So it serves the interest of both parties, the licensor and the licensee, that they ensure that they have a proper mechanism, proper agreement, proper way for compensation in case of any breach, in case of any conflict, to ensure that their relationship would continue unhindered. Because if they don't cooperate with each other, if the relationship becomes adverse and sour, both parties may lose and the competitors may win. So it is in the interest of both parties that they have excellent mechanism incorporated in the contract itself that helps them to resolve any future conflict, any future breach, any future disagreement. And one way to do that is to agree upon compensations, that in case of certain breaches, what would be the compensation, and once that compensation has been paid by the party concerned, then the agreement can go on. If sales could not be achieved for any reason, or the quality was breached for any reason, or any other conflict or disagreement arose over time, for such conflicts, for such breaches, for such lacking performances, if a compensation is stipulated, then the party which is in breach, which could not deliver, pays the compensation, and the relationship, the agreement can continue. So it requires on part of licensor a very careful evaluation of the licensee parties or potential parties, their backgrounds, their capacities, their intentions, their motivations, and their skills and capabilities to deliver up to the expectation of the licensor. So at the end of the day, it is the relationship which is far more important. The will to continue the contract, the will to continue the relationship. The parties have to work hard. Just like two individuals who get married, on top of the contract or the agreement they have with each other, they have to work hard for each other. They have to compromise for each other, and they have to help each other, and they have to work to develop a friendly relationship with each other. That is absolutely critical, irrespective of the detailed contract that they have. Similarly, in any relationship in commercial world, like a licensing relationship, there can be a very thorough contract, very detailed contract, which details all the boundaries, privileges and rights and compensations. Still, it is no substitute for goodwill and good relationship. So goodwill and good relationship must be built. Efforts must be done by both parties to become friendly to each other, to come closer to each other. A contract cannot be a substitute to these relationships. So it's absolutely essential that both licensor and licensee also take steps to come closer to each other. Maybe through visiting each other, maybe through inviting each other, maybe exchanging gifts with each other, maybe showing their goodwill towards each other. So these interactions, these goodwill gestures develop good relationships. And in marketing, we often say, build good relationship first, the profits will follow. So building relationship is always important between buyer and seller, between firms and their customers, between licensor and licensee, or any other relationship between individuals or commercial relationship, or between firms, or even between governments or nations or societies. All these entities have to work together to develop a goodwill, to develop a positive relationship with each other. And licensing relationship is no exception. So given all the terms of the contract, the parties must not remain aloof or away from each other. They should use time to develop a friendly relationship with each other, to start to trust each other, to start to develop a goodwill for each other, and that is very, very important, very, very essential. Relationship helps, the trust which develops over time helps to become more efficient in cooperation with each other. There has been a lot of research on issue of trust in relationship, in transaction, in exchange. When there is lack of trust, when there is lack of goodwill, it affects the efficiency and effectiveness of the relationship itself. With more trust, with more goodwill, the relationships are less costly, and transaction can take place more rapidly, more confidently, without involving more legal costs, more transaction costs. Hence, trust and goodwill facilitates businesses and transactions to take place efficiently. So it is imperative, it is necessary, it is essential that partners who are competing with other firms which have partnerships with their own licensees, licensors and supporters. So for partnerships are competing with partnerships more of time in the world. So it's important that the partnerships become more efficient, more effective, so that partnerships can succeed against other partnerships. And how do then partnerships become successful? One, of course, to find suitable partners. When partner is not suitable, well, the relationship will have its difficulties. It's difficult to become efficient, effective in terms of relationship and output. So partners have to be relevant to each other. They have to be suitable for that sort of partnership. That's the starting thing. And then between them, things must be agreed upon, and as far as possible must be written down. Because by writing, it gives more clarity to things, to relationships. It gives more confidence to relationship. So the things must be written in form of a contract and with detail covering all important aspects. But on top of it, a good relationship, a goodwill, a trusting relationship must also be developed through interaction, through mutual exchanges, visits, giving gifts, helping each other, showing goodwill towards each other. Without which, the relationships cannot be really made efficient and effective in commercial world. Because in commercial world, perhaps one has to change relationship, the contract of the relationship, the terms of relation very, very quickly as market environment changes. It's a fluid and ever-changing world environment, which can never be conceptualized completely at the onset, at the time of beginning of the relationship. It's difficult for parties to really assess what life is going to be later on. A lot of changes, a lot of flexibility, a lot of unknowns, and of course, a lot of mistakes may be done by parties. So goodwill comes here, trust comes here, empathy for each other comes here, which helps to reconcile, which helps to make quick decisions, which helps to change and adapt relationships as environment changes. So it is very, very important for parties to find suitable suitors, develop a proper detailed contract, and also over time work with each other to develop mutual trust, mutual goodwill, mutual confidence. Then relationships can become efficient and relationships can become effective, and then relationship can compete with other relationships and prosper. Because licensing and licensing opportunities and to expand in international markets through licensing will become increasingly the better option. For firms to succeed against their competitors, for firms to succeed in ever-changing markets, it is essential now in many industries, in many product categories, that they have to become efficient in acquiring licenses for technologies, for processes, for brands, and to develop relationships around the world with licensors and other potential parties which can become partners in these strategic alliances. So without strategic alliances, without such partnerships, without the opportunities to forge links with other parties, it is becoming increasingly difficult for any party to succeed. And hence, an important strategic competence that is required in firms in today's time, that they have the capability, they have the capacity to forge effective relationships across boundaries with firms in other countries, so that they can acquire needed technologies, they can acquire needed brands, needed formulations, and of course they can acquire needed support from other firms, so that they themselves can become efficient and effective and compete in the environment in which they are existing. So it is now very much part and parcel of the core competencies or the list of core competencies of a firm. The firms are efficient and effective in forging strategic alliances. Today the world has become so dynamic. The environment in the world markets have become so fluid, and the businesses have become so complex, the technologies have become so complex that even our rivals, the competing firms, are cooperating with each other through cross-licensing and through forging partnerships. And very commonly we see the firms which are competing with each other in certain product categories are also cooperating with each other through licensing and through such agreements. Because it's not possible for any one firm to master all aspects of any market or all aspects of world markets or all aspects of a technology efficiently and effectively. It has no choice but to rely on other firms. Which other firms? Which have the best technologies, the best brands, the best processes, part of its intellectual assets. So if a firm does not have access to best technologies, does not have access to best processes, best brands, then a firm itself cannot be successful against this competition. So it is important that firms understand the need of forging such relationships and develop capabilities to succeed in such relationships, which are so much required to succeed in international markets. Today we have discussed a very important topic which is becoming more important with passing time, that is licensing. An option which is being increasingly used by firms to enter international markets and to succeed against competition. Thank you for being with us today. Allah Hafiz.